This is Silicon Reel, the video program dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ben Wynn, the founder and CEO of DAD, a company on a mission to transform the way people across the world fix up their homes. Founded in 2015, you raised £2 million in seed funding from your strategic partner HomeServe. You have a long history creating products in the technology space here in London over the past 20 years. Ben, welcome to Silicon Reel.
Thank you, Brian. It's fantastic to be here.
It's great to have you here. I want to know, you have an impressive CV when it comes to developing tech products. You've been around for not quite 20 years, but for almost. Why jump into the home repair space? And we're all dying to know, why call it DAD?
Well, I call it DAD because I've always called my dad. So there's nothing simpler, really. Why home repair? Because that's where the idea came from. And so I am a technologist. I've messed around in technology for 20 years, but this came one day in my house when I'm trying to do a bit of DIY. I was working at Somo, the agency business, running their incubator, looking at real estate and different markets to try to put technology in, and mobile and connected world technology, and see if there's an opportunity, see if there's a market to disrupt. So I kind of had one eye on real estate and looking after the home and home maintenance. And it's a Saturday, and I've got a leaky tap, and finally I've been pressured into getting it changed. And so I'd taken the old tap off. I turned the water off, taken the old tap off, put the new one on, turned the water on, and water went everywhere. And I've kind of soaked the walls and the floors, and quite a few cursed words later.
Made a proper mess.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck. So I called my dad and I FaceTimed him. I showed him what I was doing. And he sort of told me to go back through the packaging. And I'd found the tap washer. I hadn't put the tap washer on. And if only I'd have done that, then actually it wouldn't have caused a problem.
But it was no company.
Well, when I sort of mopped it up, he says, how useful was that? And whilst I'd always done it, I've always spoken to my dad about things like that, whether it be fixing a toilet seat or a broken door handle. Whenever I don't know, I call my dad. He's the most practical guy I know. And is there a market for people out there that could access a dad like that? So the brand came easily. And why home repair? Because I think it's a market that's about time it got changed. It got transformed. So I come from the technology side, not the plumbing, heating, electric side. But yeah, I just think there's a great opportunity in it, really.
Now, you said you come from the technology side. Were you a bit frightened to jump into this home repair market where it's got all sorts of, I guess I'll call it baggage, from being an industry for 100 years,
Yep.
With service sectors, with individual contractors? Were you a bit worried you didn't have the background in that and you're jumping into something you don't know?
Not really, because before I jumped in, I took a look at the market. We looked at what the problem was, and the problem I think we're trying to solve is communication. It's the end-to-end communication. And the way I think we'll flip the market is through service. So engineering, the heating engineer, the electrician, that bit's normally pretty good. But the wraparound service, I think, is the bit that that's missing. It's the good old-fashioned customer service is devoid in this market. And it's fine if you're with a big company, if you have, get your repairs done by British Gas maybe, or HomeServe, who invested in us. But for your local and regional player, your one-man band, their service is appalling, because either they really like to do it, but their time is zapped, and they're actually on the job, they can't call you back, whatever it is. And whilst I've been in technology, most of my career has been in technology, service, marketing as a blend. So agency world is, yes, you're using technology and building new stuff, but you're servicing clients. So, you blend those three together, and actually there's a good fit for what I've been doing anyway, I think.
Right.
So, yeah.
Talk to me about that piece. I mean, as a consumer myself, I do feel frustrated sometimes. I feel like, I don't have enough transparency. I don't know who to call. When I do call them, it's on their terms.
Yep.
I'm sure they're not bad people, but it's just like that expectation of service isn't there.
Yep.
There's no competitors, especially competitors in an app form like you.
Yep.
You've studied this market. Is there a reason why that's the way it is?
Well, the way we phrase that is something goes wrong. So let's think of it as the home emergency, but just because that's the kind of most dramatic thing in your mind. I think Dad can help with way more than that. But something goes wrong at home, what do? You're going to speak to someone you don't know. about something you don't understand. They'll charge you whatever they want, turn up whenever they want. It's just a nightmare. So why is it like that? I think it's like that because back in the day, and the way we describe it is, at some point in history, I always say the 1960s, but maybe it was before that, everyone lived locally. So back in the day, you'd have the kind of artisans. So it would be the baker would do a really good job at that and they'd be very specialist, as well as the cobbler and the blacksmith. And that evolved, and you've got the local little towns, and then you're at a point where you live locally, you live somewhere near where your parents lived, and you got a job with a guy you probably knew, maybe doing what your father did, that kind of thing. But the trades you used were people you knew. So the chance of them ripping you off and doing a bad job was very slim, because that's their entire business, their whole reputation. And then over time, people moved away from that model and moved to cities. And the moment you move away and you're less locally connected, you don't know the trades, what do? So there along comes the Yellow Pages, any form of paper-based directory, and they're great because they help you, put you in touch with somebody who can help. And there's still this idea of local networks, local reputation, but you're one step removed from it. It's not quite the same. And then along comes the internet, and you get the digital versions of the Yellow Pages, which are the online directories. Lots of different variants, lots of different, what I call Gen 1 businesses in the space. They may have a different business model or a different way of monetizing it, but really it's a directory, it's a classified listing online. And that's worked. It's worked absolutely fine for a certain amount of time because the customers haven't really had the expectation that it needs to change. It's just they've just expected it. But I think it's time it did. So that's why we've jumped in.
And you launched on Father's Day, is that true? Or you started the company Father's Day and you launched the product a year later? Is that true? And how can you ever stay to those deadlines?
We did do that. We couldn't resist, really. So in fact, we even waited a few days to make sure we set the business up on Father's Day. And launch is a big word. So we didn't paint the town red. We didn't do a big fanfare. We're trying to do this iteratively. But we did get a V1 of the app that we're proud of in the store, and get customers to come through the door on Father's Day this year. So,
wow.
Yeah, 12 months from start to launch, and then we're just a few months past that. Yeah,
that's impressive. What does the experience look like? If I get the app right now, I can download it on, I guess, an iOS and Android.
Yep.
I pull it up. What's the experience like? And are you happy with that right now?
Super happy with the product. It's really stable, works across different platforms. And it works, which is a great start. So product is good. Am I happy with it? Okay. Will I ever be happy with it? That's a different question. So what is the experience? It's a video calling app. So think of it as like FaceTime.
Like FaceTime. So this is not far off from when your tap breaks, water everywhere. You literally call Dad. FaceTime is perfect. You can point it there. I think we've all done that in the last year. I've done that, or at least taken pictures to show my plumber. And so it's like that, but now in the app form.
Yep, so you get the Dad app, you punch your details in, and there's a big call button. You call and you get connected to a Dad expert. So we've got a network of experts all across the country. They've got an iPad app that we've built for them, and it kind of broadcasts the message out a bit like, I don't know, ordering an Uber or something. Who's going to take this call? One of the experts answers it, you're connected, you speak face to face. So instantly we've transformed that market, because when was the last time you spoke face to face with a plumber or an electrician? It just doesn't happen, right? So you start to build that rapport, which helps to build trust. And their job is not just to fix things. Primarily it's to help people, but it's to do that kind of appreciative inquiry. So it's that, tell me what's wrong. And in an instant, you get to know if it's someone who's what we call a have-a-go hero, someone who, like me, is in their bathroom and they've got the taps off and the tools out, and all they need is a little bit of advice.
Right.
And they're probably a little bit stressed and they need a little bit of reassurance and, turn the stopcock off, everything's fine. Or you get the DIFM, and for us the DIFM is the do it for me. Someone who just is outsourcing their life, they just help me, bring me someone round to do this for me. And it doesn't really matter either way, but you speak to the expert, they provide the advice, and their role is to take a look around that situation, around that home, around that bathroom or the living room or wherever it is, and as if they were there to capture a brief of this is how we would fix it. And then they say to the customer, in order to do this, you need to do X, Y, and Z, you need parts A, B, C. What would you like to do? If you like, we'll ship you some parts and tools so that you can fix it, or we can send someone round. And it's then down to the customer and see what happens.
Okay.
The magic, though, is that we can fix it so much more than we ever thought remotely. That's the bit that we've been surprised by.
Okay.
You know, you think you need someone, but about 60% of the time we can get it fixed.
So you can fix it right there, and they pay for a minimum price on a call.
£10 a call right now.
Okay.
Fixed price, no time limit.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times my water heater cuts out. Okay, and I live on like the second floor of a walk up, and then the water heater's on another floor, and then it's in the attic, right? Yep. Now I'm still fairly mobile, but I gotta climb up on the thing, and I gotta pop into the attic, and I know that over the course of 1,000 times doing this, one of these days it's not gonna go right.
Yep.
And when I get up there, it says like F61 or F25, and when I pull out the instructions, I can't figure it out, and I'm smart. And I still can't figure it out. You have no idea how many times I would love to have used this to just show it, because I'm sure they can fix it. What happens now is I wait, the landlord calls British Gas, some guy comes out a day later, and if he has the part and da-da-da, I'm convinced it's a racket. I don't know if it's true, but it's frustrating for me, and it's a pain point that needs fixing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So unfortunately, let's put you back into that scenario, right? So that's happened.
Yeah.
It's stressful, it's frustrating, it's just an annoyance that you don't need. And I can't tell you what your F16 actually is, but I'm sure the experts can. You use the app, you call at that moment, you show them what make it is, what model it is, what the error code is. And what we've started to build, but I think it'll take us a while to actually get there, is the data side of this. So then they look up that error code right there and then, and can share that with you, share the online guide, tell you how to fix it. And let's just run with that a little bit. I reckon if you just push the reset button or repressurized it, you'll get back up and running, and it's in 10 minutes.
Yeah, interesting where you say data, because I guess you're going to build a database over time, and you might be able to even be proactive for some of these things. And you really, I mean, that's some fascinating data from a manufacturing standpoint, from all of these different points of view.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge data play underneath this. So it's very human, it's very service based. It's transformative in the market, but once we start to get that volume and we see types of issues, the way in which we fix it, we start to basically mine the information that's in these guys' heads. The automation that we can do for customers is huge.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Talking about competitive landscape,
Yep.
because you jumped in here, I guess a year and change ago. Your product launched 6 months ago, 5 months ago.
5 months ago, yep.
You know, if I had a problem around here, and I've had many where I need something fixed, you know, my choices are to go back to the old school model and try to find someone, and I don't even know where to even look these days very much.
Yep.
Or what I've done in the past sometimes is I've called TaskRabbit. You know, and,
Yep.
and TaskRabbit provides a lot of different services across the board, whether it's waiting in line and wrapping packaging. We had the head of community at TaskRabbit in here, I think 2 years ago for Silicon Reel. They had just come to London.
Yep.
It was like their 27th city outside of America. And it took them a while to get going, but now they offer that service. But I'll be honest, I've had some taskers come here and get the job done,
Yep.
and I've had some taskers come here and not know what to do. I've actually been able to use the Dad app, and it was to make some shelves in my closet here. And when the guy came over, he knew exactly what he was doing, and I didn't worry about it at all. And he fixed it, and he knew, and it was done. He was like, well, he's one of those guys, I guess, like your dad, that instills you with confidence because he knows what to do.
Yep.
As opposed to the TaskRabbit, they might know what to do. And so, were you concerned about them as a competitor when you see other people in the competitive space? You know, how does that play out?
So, number one, love TaskRabbit. I think it's brilliant, use it all the time, and I think they've done a fantastic job, and they seem to be scaling well. And what I understand is they're moving closer to the home services world. Am I scared of it? Am I worried about it? My view is just different. So, I believe this market is only transformable if you get certain things right, and trust is one of those. Trust and transparency being absolutely key in a market that basically has none. So trust is a really weird thing. You can't tell someone to trust you, you've got to earn it. But our focus is around home repair, it's around DIY, it's around skilled trades. So what we're really getting asked about most of the time is heating, plumbing, electrics, and handyman stuff. But if you think about the more complex ones of those, you have to be a gas-safe heating engineer to come around and fix your boiler, or an NIC qualified electrician to come and rewire your house. I just looked at it really crudely and said, well, we've got to build a brand, we've got to build a consumer brand, we put a lot of effort into that, we chose the name Dad, it seems to resonate, which is great. If I as a consumer trust Dad to rewire my house, there's much more propensity that I'll trust them to put a shelf up than if I trust someone to queue for something and they offer the service of putting a shelf up. I'm probably not going to stretch to rewiring the house because just the brand trust in it. So we've decided to specialise. We focus on home repair. We think that's a big enough market. There's 8 billion spent in the UK a year on home repairs. That'll do for us. And let's see.
In a weird way, is TaskRabbit a good thing for you? Because people are very used to booking these things online, having strangers come to their house and do these things, because that wasn't the case a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so TaskRabbit, but a lot of businesses. So the wave that we're riding is one of instant gratification. It's app-based services, or forget the technology, but app, web-based. You get access to a service through technology. The fact that an Uber can turn up outside your door through pushing some buttons, the fact that you can get someone to queue for you via your app is all fantastic. Equally, other advice economy businesses. So I'd say Dad is an advice economy business. We're proud of being in that space.
What does that mean, advice economy?
Well, that's where, really crudely, you've got a layman that connects to an expert. So Dad is an advice economy business because as the homeowner with your F16 problem, you need to connect to someone who knows what they're doing.
Right, as opposed to delivering a transport like an Uber or delivering food like a Deliveroo, you're delivering advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Well, yeah. So it's the same as the medical businesses. So Babylon Health and Push Doctor and Doctor Care Anywhere are advice economy businesses because they connect you to a GP or a variant in the medical space. So all of those types of businesses are educating the market for us, which is great. The wave we're riding is the fact that consumers are now used to that type of service.
Okay. What are the tradesmen saying? Are they suspicious of you when they sign up? I'm guessing there hasn't really been a lot of companies in the UK doing this before. So what's that been like?
Yeah, so we are new. We get, I would say, 90-10 positive feedback. We don't get 100%. From customers, we've had 1 3-star review and everything else has been 4 or 5, so we're pleased with that. So that's sort of intoxicating in its own way. But from the supply side, we do get the odd naysayer. So it's like the way I look at it, because I spent a good deal of time in the taxi world working with people like Addison Lee, and there was always the black taxi against the private hire, and now you've got black taxis against Uber, and they don't like change. So the odd bad review we get is quite clearly from people who are going, well, via a video call, you can't be gas safe. How can you advise people to take the covers off the boiler and rewire it? I'm like, well, but we're not doing that. Like, we would never do that.
Right.
We've had customers call in with, they just need help changing a light bulb. And the stat I love is our target audience, young professionals, less locally connected, Londoners right now is where we're focused. Only 10% of them can change a light bulb. Which is just a hilarious stat.
Wow.
6% can bleed a radiator. They're not practically minded.
Okay.
So it's a good market to go after, right? So this guy calls in and he wants his strip light changing. He flips the camera around on the app, shows us it, and it's just hanging off the ceiling. And we're like, you don't want to be touching that.
Right.
We're not going anywhere near it. Show us where your trip switches are, isolate it, and we'll send an electrician round straight away because that's a hazard. So we do get people that are kind of not embracing change, but I would say 90% of the time we've had fantastic take up, both for our experts, those are the guys that answer the calls, and the technicians, the people that are going around doing the jobs in people's homes. And the stereotypes play out. So we thought it would be very word of mouth based. It would be the local electrician knows the plumber, knows the handyman, and it turns out that's exactly the case. We ran one Facebook ad a few months ago. It was picked up for an expert, picked up by a guy in somewhere near Chester, I'm not sure, and he signed up, went through the vetting process, became an expert, told his brother, he's an electrician, runs a plumbing business, he signed up, his cousin signed up. There's this whole sort of Chester-based network of dad experts, because they think it's fantastic. It helps them. The thing for them is they're used to working with their hands, and that ties them to the local area. So they can't work for anyone outside that area. So they've got that local network. It's great. But what we're doing is using the knowledge in their head, not just with their hands. And
right.
I think that's quite
interesting.
Yeah,
so you might bring a lot of efficiencies in the market.
Yeah, I mean, you said, am I scared of this market? I'm not scared of it. I think it's just huge opportunity, but the amount of wastage is just...
Yeah.
crazy.
It's interesting. I was talking with someone at Deliveroo the other day, or no, a restaurant, and they said, when we're not busy, our Deliveroo business gets busy, and it's like almost the opposite way. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting to hear that, like on a night where they're, Sunday night when no one comes there, everyone's doing takeaway. And so it was just this massive way to just really take advantage of their kitchen and their staff.
Yep.
And just fascinating to think about the amount of inefficiencies in the past. And again, if you're talking about a local plumber, only limited by his, drivable geography, and pretty soon, I'm sure you see in the future him giving advice to someone in Singapore, that starts to become interesting. And I guess that's what you mean by advice economy.
Exactly. We are geographically constrained, so it probably wouldn't be a UK electrician advising the Singaporean guy, because you need to know the standards, the regulation, it's just simple things like between you and I. So you'd call it a faucet, I'd call it a tap. You'd call it a furnace, I'd call it a heater. It's just terminology, language, but then there are regulations and things that go with it. But one guy in Chester can help everybody across the UK. So there's huge scale difference that we can tap into. So
a lot of entrepreneurs watch this show, and a lot of them are kind of beginning, seed capital, seed stage. You've launched the app, you're gaining traction out there. You're, I know, bursting at the seams in your office space. You're probably in the 20s as far as staff there?
17.
17,
right now.
okay.
Yeah.
You had the £2 million of funding. I'm guessing you're moving through that to a certain extent.
Yep.
This is an interesting time for you, and I would love to know what's going on in your brain as a CEO. You've really nailed your branding. The name Dad is amazing. You obviously have a design background. You really put that into place. It looks great. Your office has a good vibe to it, and everyone seems to be on board with what you're doing. The next step is an interesting one. Some people call it the desert, where you try to go to that time where you have to now scale bigger and become an organization where maybe you need an HR person. You're going to go from maybe 20 to 50 people, starts to get interesting.
Yep.
What are some of the things that are in your mind as far as challenges, AKA opportunities? Because we don't get to speak to someone like you all the time.
Okay, well, so let me give you a view of where we are. I think we've found an opportunity in a crazy sized market that has very little competition, direct competition right now. So it's a race, because I'm sure there will be. I'm sure people like a TaskRabbit, there's lots of other people on the periphery for this, will come closer to us. I think we have got our branding right. I think there's lots more we can do, but I think we've done a good effort at that, a good effort with our product. I'll nip back to your product question. So what have we got right? Everything from the app downwards, I'm pleased with. What we've got to focus on right now is the funnel to get people in. Okay. So if this business turns out to be a B2C model, then there's a lot of work we need to do on that funnel, on web as an acquisition channel, and how you take someone through to getting that video call. Because the video call bit is fine and it's great, and if you get it and you've heard about it and watched this video and you sort of see what the value is, then fantastic. But we've not done a great job of surfacing the values, and there's so much that's rich that comes from our experts just naturally. We've got to start surfacing that. So that's definitely front of mind.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. And I remember TaskRabbit had a hard time doing it, and I'm in the tech space, and I'm still resistant to get the app and do that. And when I tried your service, I think I even resisted some of the friction points at first, but once the video call happened, I was in.
Yeah.
So
we've got to obsess about that bit, but I'm confident we can do it. We've got, really proud of the team we've got, and I know we can crack that. That's a matter, but not a very long amount of time, but a matter of time before we can do that. After that, we've got to focus on scaling experts and technicians. We've focused geographically on not Greater London, but a kind of defined southeast area that we can do probably relatively inefficiently, but we can take customers end to end and prove the end-to-end value of the business. We can get some stats about exactly how many times can we fix it. Right now, it's about 60% of the time we can fix it remotely for people. So we want to get some more data from that. And during that period, customers are going to ramp. Our supply base is going to ramp, the internal team, the team in the office is going to ramp. None of that worries me at all. I've done that before, a couple of times before, and scaling the business to a point really comfortable with. I think it's more like 100 people when you get to that point where you need your internal HR and you need those processes. who really knows? It's tricky. That transition I'm ready for. I don't know if you can ever sort of get it completely right, but it's a while away for us right now, so I'm not focused on it. But the only way I think any business that's scaling fast can keep the rails on is through values. So getting the culture right in the business, and we've just obsessed about that from day one. So hopefully if we can get that culture baked into the business, then that's what will help it scale. So.
Okay. Funding wise, are you speaking with VCs? Is that the next step, or is HomeServe the kind of one that's just going to ante up?
Right now, we've got a great partner with HomeServe. They've given us the $2 million. It gives us a fantastic start. But it is strategic, so they also give us access to supply, to a whole series of partners from workwear to van livery to distribution partners to parts, etc. So
and they brand their vans Dad as well.
Well, we do. They've got the big sort of shiny red vans for HomeServe,
Okay.
but we're a completely separate business, separate brand, going after a separate audience. So, but they're just a very helpful partner.
Okay. At some point, though, you take away from their market. Is there a weird conflict of interest, or is it such a small percentage of the revenues that it's not important?
Certainly, right now, we're far too small for it to be an issue. I'd love to get to the point where we're a bit of a thorn in the side. Okay. Do we want VC? I think this thing has legs. I think it's got a global opportunity. I think it's a race, and to do that is very capitally intensive. It's not quite your classic marketplace business. This is not an eBay where we're kind of just brokering both sides, because I think we need to curate it a little bit more on the supply side. But it's going to be capital intensive, and does a corporate really want to do that? Right now, they're very supportive, so let's see where we get to. But yeah, I think approaching VCs at the right point when we're ready would be interesting.
What kind of check do we need then? 20 million to scale this? 30 million?
Yeah, ask me in 3 months, ask me in 6 months.
But it's along that line.
Oh, yeah.
Probably more later if you really want to scale this.
Yeah. I don't want more money now because we need to know what it is. I mentioned a few times we need to know, where at cost effectively we're going to get customers from what channel with what proposition. We're testing a whole series of plans, transactional and membership and different routes to market. When we know what this is, when we know what really resonates, then it's really easy, right? You just turn the dial on. You just plow cash in and it goes through the funnel. And we're not there yet. So
right. Yeah, the membership model is very interesting as well, right?
Yeah, super excited about that. So we've just launched that. We launched that last week. Very, very sort of very beta or beta, and and it's gone down great. Like, so we've not even put any collateral out there. We've just kind of tested it with some customers that have been using us. And what works really well for us, so £10 a call, transactional. If you do need a technician to come round, a plumber to come round, then you charge the market rate. And it's just an hourly rate. We do a fixed price on the job. It's an hour and you need these parts, it's going to cost 100 quid, whatever. But when you get to the point where you need 3 hours work or it's just over 2 hours work, then we charge £5 a month for a membership. You get unlimited calls to the service. You're always there. It's the peace of mind sell. But then we're going to give in a 40% discount on the labour. So it pays for itself. And what we've done there, we think is quite clever. It's Amazon Prime-like, where I can't stop buying stuff from Amazon because of Prime.
Get it to where they can't live without it.
Exactly. Right. And now you look around, you look at your snag list, which is what Dad's trying to help with, right? Everyone has a snag list. There's about 5 in everyone's home. And you look around and you see the snag and you think, I got 40% off that. And you started to add that value piece to this. Not only is it most convenient, it's reliable, it's instant access, it's cheaper than anything else. We think we can price it at the same level as your local handyman. So if you knew him and he could come round and he was available and he could give you good service, great, use him. Like, why not? But the problem is you don't know those people. So we think we can do that at scale.
Yeah, this membership model, I believe it's the future, but it's such a nuanced model to understand and to continue to remind the customer that you are adding value, even when some months you're not. But again, it's that whole kind of insurance, that peace of mind, that feeling that maybe Dad is there whenever I need him to help me, that just keeps people around. Like the gym membership is there even though you haven't used it in 3 months, but it lets you know that you can be healthy. Yep. And it's a real nuance. We have a membership site and we're constantly learning about how to add value in intangible ways through that service. So I agree, if you can get that right, then it's time to call those VCs maybe.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Uber, because obviously there's some interesting comparisons with yourself and Uber, but Dad versus Uber, what do you see that Uber has done right, done wrong? And it's kind of interesting me asking you this because you pretty much almost started Uber in 1999 in the UK.
I wish.
Travis stole that idea from you, but if you could just talk us about that thing back in '99, because you're very familiar with that business model, and then talk about the comparisons between you and Uber now, or where you're going with this.
All right, so 99, 2000 is my first startup experience. I jumped ship from Logica. I was working there at the time, so big consultancy, and I'd learned everything I needed to know about being in a corporate. I learned loads. It was fantastic. I learned all the things about performance reviews and employee engagement, and then I jumped ship, and I'm glad I did. And I went to a startup that was Uber but on feature phones. So it was the same idea. It was use your phone to order a cab. It's based in London, and this is at a time where there's no mobile internet. It's 9.6K upload of the mobile web, no stored credit cards, obviously no apps. There's no smartphones. It's just feature phones, and we managed to build some amazing piece of tech. So we aggregated the whole London taxi market. Addison Lee invested into the business, as did a few other people on the supply side. Built something that was transformative. You book via the web, you book via SMS, but you had this crazy journey where you'd say, home to work. It's like 4 or 5 SMSs, or your power user could do it all in one message. It was the clunkiest experience ever, but people liked it. They used it. And the magic moment for that was using a phone. You could get a car to turn up outside your window, and it was like 2 minutes. It was just amazing. Ultimately, the timing was probably wrong. Timing in terms of the market imploded, and all investment got pulled. Yeah. But timing, because the technology wasn't there, it wasn't quite right. So I'd love to say Travis stole the idea. That'd be great.
But that taught you an important lesson about timing.
Oh goodness!
And again, like when you had that water leak. And you were able to use FaceTime, like you couldn't have done that 5 years earlier. Yeah. So I guess that must have caught a couple light bulbs because you'd kind of been there and done that at the wrong time.
Yes. So that is a lesson that I learned and constantly carry with me. Well, that's probably why I'm so buoyant about Dad. Really, I just think the timing, all the jigsaw puzzles are there. So we need the smartphone, we need a stored credit card, we need consumers to be used to using app-based businesses, technology-powered service businesses. We need the 4G networks, the broadband ubiquity everywhere, and all of these things have just come together. That wasn't possible 2 years ago. I think we've got the timing right.
Now it is. Comparisons to Uber.
Yes. So, what we start out, and you could say Dad is, Uber for plumbers. You could sort of go that crude analogy. I don't think it is. I think what's similar to Uber is Uber has made convenient a service that was fundamentally not. So everybody hated getting a cab because there was a huge black market. It was too expensive. The guys would always say to you, you'd call up and, where's my taxi driver? He's just around the corner. It was just absolutely rife with horribleness. Pretty much the same with the industry that I'm looking at right now, to be perfectly honest. So what they've done is injected convenience, technology-powered service, done an absolutely amazing job at it, and that's what we're going to do. So in that sense, it's very similar. The differences, though, the ground transportation market, the taxi market, is one of the most commoditized things that's out there. So I don't care who's going to take me from A to B. I want to be safe, but I want them to turn up on time. I don't care if they're going to speak English or not, because I'm just working in the back of the car anyway. So I want to make sure. Actually, on the way over here, I was in an Uber and a bike drove into the back of the car.
No.
You won't believe it. But, wow. So I want to be safe, and they can't totally guarantee it. But I don't care about the driver. Any driver is sort of good enough. It's very different for what we're doing, because you need a gas safe qualified heating engineer. You need a handyman that's got loads of experience. Like I think it was John that came around and did your shelves. Yeah. He's a guy of experience. You don't just want anyone coming around to do that sort of thing. So that's where we need to curate it a little bit. It's not a completely open marketplace. It can't be entirely a gig economy business. But of course there are parallels. We're trying to get people much more freedom, much more flexibility to work in a different way. So on our supply side, the people where I think we'll get our technicians, they've worked 7-8 years for a local business, for a British Gas, maybe for a home serve, and they're desperate to run their own business. So what do? They go, okay, well, I'll print some business cards. and I go and post those through the letterboxes. They have no clue about marketing. No, like they don't know how to build that network. So what we think we can do is what Uber's done for the driver. You just get the demand, and if you get the demand, that's why outside Uber's offices. When we started out, we were in King's Cross, and just around the corner was the Uber office. I think they've moved now, but every lunchtime there was a queue of drivers. And that was good, great for Uber. It's kind of sad really, because they were all coming from the black taxi fleet from Addison Lee, from 99 2000. I worked with Addison Lee for a long time, and yeah, their drivers are leaving because Uber's got the demand.
Yeah, and so you want to do that same thing,
Yeah.
right? Well, I'm curious what you think of some of the other service-based companies here in the UK. Deliveroo is one I can't get out of my head because I see their drivers everywhere. I mean, it's great for branding alone.
Yeah.
I had Ben, the partner from Index, in here who was responsible for taking Just Eat public probably a year and a half ago.
Yep.
It was a great story, great valuation on the stock market. Since then, in London at least, and maybe some other markets, even when I was in Barcelona, they had Deliveroo, and I used it.
Yep.
Deliveroo has really become ubiquitous and gone everywhere. And you can see, I wouldn't say how fickle the market is, but how a product can, on paper, look like it has everything, but it's really missing something. And I don't know how Just Eat is doing, but I do know Deliveroo is dominating the relatively probably high-end or medium to high-end food delivery service here in London and maybe some other cities. When you see things like that, what do you see that I don't see? Because you probably see the matrix in a different way.
Yeah, maybe. What do I see that's different? Only way I think I can answer that is by the experiences I've had. So we ordered pizzas the other day from Just Eat. I think Just Eat put they didn't go far enough, is the way I would describe it. So if you go back to my narrative of you've got the paper-based directory and then you've got the online directory, what Just Eat did is fine, app-based, but it's a directory, it's an aggregator of the local restaurants, and then stop. And it's great, it's transformative, it's huge, it was one of the most successful IPOs, brilliant. But it didn't quite go far enough.
It doesn't deliver wow,
exactly.
as Tony Shea from Zappos would say.
Exactly.
We use that term around here a lot. Are you
Yeah.
delivering wow?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to think about the customer. That's the only way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think Deliveroo have done a better job. So we order the pizza from Just Eat. The app experience is fine. The product is good. It's all great. And then ultimately, the pizza's 45 minutes late. Who do I complain to? Well, the same old crappy business around the corner that I could have just called. So, where was the value add? And Deliveroo is different to that. They've thought, I think, the way that they're dominating is they've just thought about that end-to-end customer journey more.
Yeah, and they're curating, I think, the suppliers, and they take responsibility for that journey. Exactly. And they're the first one to give you that discount, to make the phone call, to apologize. And their delivery people are, really top notch. They understand customer service. They're nice. They say thank you. After walking up my 2-floor stairs, they say thank you with a smile. They don't want to tip. It's like they've thought about it. Again, it always comes back to that customer experience.
I think it does.
I guess we can all learn a bit about that, right?
Yeah, and that's what Deliveroo have done. It's what Uber have done. It's the businesses that are transforming things. I think that's because that's how they're transforming the market. They've just looked at it and like we're doing. I think that's a good analogy. There is no customer service in this industry. Well, let's just inject it. What does that mean? Different industries, but that's all they do.
I remember I was talking to Ben, it might have been off camera, on camera, and I said something to him, and he said, we were always wondering, he said, for him it was important to get on the app, because he said, once you're on someone's phone as an app, he said that's an important kind of beachhead for real estate. I don't know if that's still true, but that was important for him. And he said, we were always thinking that what if Google decided to just do all this for free, and just to come in and just regurgitate all over the market and say, oh yeah, this is free, and just kill off all these businesses that are trying to make a service out of it. Do you ever think about that scenario for what you do? Obviously, Google bought Nest. We can get into the connected home recently, but do you ever worry about that kind of possibility?
Yes. So I started June 2015, and I'm not sure the exact date, but maybe April, May, Amazon launched Home Services. So, there you go. But I find that really interesting. That is what I believe Amazon are doing there, is monetizing a latent demand. So they've got every shopper in the world, and people buy stuff from there that needs installing. So you buy a shelf, how do you put it up? So they've got millions and millions of customers, a latent demand for home services of different flavours.
Okay.
So how do they make more money out of it is where I think they've got to. And they're using the marketplace model, and they introduce people, and it's a kind of directory.
Okay. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about that.
Well, predominantly in the US, they're not really
Okay.
here in London, but
They're now in food delivery, and and so is Uber.
yeah.
Against Deliveroo. Interesting enough.
But the thing for me is Amazon is all about good customer service. That's what they tell you. That's what they pride themselves on.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, right? You order something and it turns up either the next day, or you do the same day delivery.
Or earlier sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic. I'm not convinced that a marketplace is what people want in home repair. If it's a remodeling, if it's a, you want to put a conservatory on or go to loft extension, you need to talk to at least 3 people. You need 3 quotes. It takes time. It's a relationship-based thing. It's quoting. It's estimating. You can't do that without going down to the home. If you've got a leaky tap, why do I want to speak to 3 people? It makes no sense.
Okay.
I just want someone to come and do it. Putting a shelf up, sorting out your water heater in your loft. Like you don't need that. So I'm not convinced that unless you focus on that service, and you have to focus on it. That's why Uber's focusing on ground transport. They're not trying to do everything else. Deliveroo is just about delivery. Don't get carried away with it. And they're doing really well by focusing. So,
What if I'm Amazon and I call you up and say, Ben, I want it for $50 million. Can I buy Dad and incorporate it into Amazon? What do you do?
take the phone call. Yeah, sure. I think great exit. That's fine. But we're nowhere near that right now. But that implies to me, let's run with that scenario, that actually they see what I see, which is this is a global business, a global service business, which I think that's the opportunity we've got. So I'd absolutely love that phone call to happen.
Right, but who knows what you do? Maybe it would be like the Snapchat conversation with Facebook, and maybe it shows them that maybe it's time to keep going alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love it. Would I sell to them? That's entirely dependent on what happens at the time. But that's.
What's your view on where we are right now in the UK when it comes to tech? Also, I'm sure you've had a lot of run-ins over the years with the Silicon Valley crowd, the way the Yanks do things. What do you see that America does well? What do you see that Britain does well? And both have changed so significantly since you've been around. 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot to talk about in London tech. There was an odd, lastminute.com. There was a few things to talk about. Yep. But in the last 2 or 3 years, we got $1 billion valuation companies, not just one, but many.
Yep.
Feels like London's coming to its own, although it doesn't feel like it's necessarily made it. What's your view?
I agree. London is getting more buoyant. There's more people doing more interesting things. Has London made it? I don't think London will make it, and I don't think English people will make it until they learn the lesson from the American way of being positive about it. And a lot of what I hear, what I see when I've been over there onto the West Coast is talk, but that helps.
Talk as in this is going to be the greatest thing ever. Okay.
But why beat yourself up? I kind of have to fight myself. I'm not a pessimist in any form, but you have to believe in yourself. And the natural English way is to, it probably won't work. Well, how are you going to build a business?
Why is that? And you're not really like that, though.
No, I'm not.
But if it's a cultural thing, you're always fighting it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so
just I'm always fighting my lack of sense of style. Right?
It's something you've got to be aware of, and I'm certainly not of the ilk of it'll never work. I'm the exact opposite, but I'm not the sort of stereotypical brazen, loud, American positive for no reason. Yeah. So you can have stereotypes either way. I think the fact that the government are getting more excited about what's possible, that they see the benefits of it, I think is great. What I actually think England is doing really well is what it's always done really well. It's that very good science, very good engineering is just starting to surface. So why is England doing well? Because I think globally that's becoming more cool. And I love that. So for me, heroes are the Teslas and the Edisons, not modern day Tesla, but the classic Tesla, the guy that sort of it invents stuff,
Okay.
actually out of thin air comes up with really, really cool, groundbreaking
So when you
things.
see something like ARM sell for an incredible valuation, you're very proud of that.
Yeah, hugely
I
proud.
mean, that's a great British technology story that, well, most people didn't really know much about, but that company was out in Cambridge,
Yep.
providing a huge percentage of iPhone, technology blueprints.
Yep.
Yeah, in an incredible way. And
Yep.
that is just good old-fashioned great science. Right?
Yeah,
Great engineering.
deep mind, just around the corner. It's great.
Yeah.
It's proper engineering, proper real value add, proper technology. Cambridge for a long time. To me, Silicon Roundabout, great. I love it. I think it's fantastic. That's a good example to me of good marketing of this. I love it. But real value coming out of the science labs in Cambridge there's a lot of innovation that's just not been talked about. It's crazy. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So take on some of the attitudes of the Americans, being kind of inspired by them, and use that to kind of combat some of that Britishness in a cultural way. Because when it comes to a startup, let's be honest, you need to have that about you because you are really a cheerleader every day.
Yep.
I'm sure you have good days and bad days.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone looks to you, and you have to be very optimistic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was taught a long time ago, you're always on stage. So, whether you're on camera like this, whether you are literally on stage, or whether you just sat in your office on a horrible Thursday afternoon in the rain, you're always on stage. And, I think there comes a point where you can't fake it. It has to be real. But the very moment you lose your own optimism for what it is you're trying to do, just stop. Like, just don't bother. It's pointless. So you have to believe.
Talk to me about Brexit. When it came out, I think most Londoners and tech people, I doubt they were for it. I think a lot of them were shocked. Of course, the technology space in general is probably usually kind of more cumulative thinking. It's usually in their interest to have this one marketplace, et cetera. I ended up seeing a lot of VCs. I pretty much talked with most of the partners about their views, a lot of the tech CEOs. We have Jed Lynn from Cedars in here like the day after. And what's your view on it now that we've had a few months to process it, and will it ultimately affect Dad in any way going forward?
What's my view on it? I'm annoyed by it. I'm still in shock by it. I think it's just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Just because something's not perfect, I think throwing the baby out with the bathwater is not the right approach. And what really annoys me is the way that it happened. So it was just poorly managed, badly timed.
It's politics, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think we'll be worse off for it, no matter what, because even if somehow magically we knew what we were voting for, which we still really don't, because there's no deal, that would have been like a weird thing to vote for something rather than vote for an ephemeral idea that no one knows what it is. Even if we manage to negotiate a deal that's successful, we stay in the single market and still close borders if that's what we really want to do. How is that beneficial? Because we'll have killed ourselves for 5 years. It makes no sense to me. So will it affect Dad ultimately? It entirely depends what the deal is. What I don't like is the fact we don't know. And so everyone's saying we need to know, but of course we've got to get the right deal. So
yeah,
I do know one thing. I don't want that job.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
There's no way I want to be doing that.
You're in the business of connecting people. Like that's literally what you do.
Yep.
Whether it's connecting people in the service industry or connecting consumers, and you're in an information advice economy. So this whole concept of isolating yourself, I think, in any way, is just hard for us to kind of fathom.
Yep.
I've tried to kind of learn something from it, but I tend to agree. We're going to see how that plays out. Other companies in the UK tech space, I'm curious what you think about companies that go big on branding and marketing. The one that comes to mind is Transferwise. I had Tabit here on the show a couple of years ago, before they had their Andreessen Horowitz board seat, before they had their $1 billion valuation. But they always were very aggressive, going after the banks, some pretty crazy stuff, crazy ads, but I think really worked in their favor. I think I just got something from them where they had a bus across the street from Parliament, and they were letting balloons in the air, and they really go for the jugular when it comes to that stuff. How do you feel about that kind of marketing? Do you think there'll ever be a place for Dad to do things like that? It doesn't seem like your style. Or do you think Tabit's kind of taking a lesson from an American way of doing it? Or is he just going after such an entrenched market of banks? Do you think he has to go big?
I think he has to. Can Dad ever do that? I kind of secretly love to do that because I think it's a really super cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Will we ever do that? you've got to be really confident, and that is either ridiculous backing or absolutely nailed on product market fit, I think, before you do that. I've seen a few businesses, let's not talk about them, but do that before they've even found, like they've just got going and they spend loads of money on that. And to me, that makes no sense. You've got to either have big pockets to do that and find your way through it whilst you're spending. And to a certain extent, to take on a bank or the banks or the financial world, you kind of have to have that anyway. So I don't think what they did is wrong. I think the time that we do that wrong is you can't support it if a product's not good enough. But Transferwise product's great, so they pulled it off.
The other thing I thought of, I was talking about the Yanks earlier. Does Dad ever become a product for the American market? And if so, what do you think the nuances are? And would you ever pick up and go to the Valley?
Yes, and yes.
Cool.
I might have to just check in with the family before I up and left. But can it work for the US market? Absolutely. I think it can work in pretty much any market. As I say, we are nationally constrained. The challenge with the US for an Englishman is to think it's one country, where really it's 50 odd different countries just that happen to all speak mostly English.
Yeah, it's very regional as
well.
Very
regional. Regulation is a real challenge. The laws around how you can operate as a home service provider over there are tricky. Benefit I've got, again, strategic partnership. Home Serve have been in the US for 10 years, I think, or maybe more. They know a lot about that, so they give me great access. The benefit of Dad being a virtual service, so if we're not sending someone around to the home, but you can call, we can cover, let's say, most states very, very quickly. So I mean, my original plan said 10 markets. I meant London, and then actually I didn't say New York or LA. I sort of meant big, sprawling urban conurbations. Maybe
Chicago.
Chicago would be one, or Atlanta would be one.
Okay.
Because you don't, for what we're doing, you don't really want what's it called, multi-tenant dwellings. Downtown Manhattan, but they've got the maintenance guy in the basement, so there's less of a use. So we think it will be other cities, but can't wait to get there.
Okay, so you're open to scale. It's interesting because I've had a lot of entrepreneurs on here that are no rush. Damian Kimmelman from Dudale, no rush to go there. Lend Invest, no rush to go there. Some of them maybe are feeling this idea that they've gone a little bit too big, with expansion maybe as of a couple of years ago, and things are cooling off. Maybe just focus on and own that UK market, which is big, whatever they're going afterwards.
But don't get me wrong, I don't want to go there tomorrow. I have no intention of doing this too quickly. I quite like that phrase. I'm not in a rush. I see it as a race, but it's the tortoise and the hare type race. And I think if you're too much of a hare and we went too big too quickly, having not exactly nailed on what the product is, what the service is, what the proposition is, which is the phase I think we're at right now. We've got something because customers like it, they rave about it, but we need to know a lot more about this business before we choose to go to a different market. So.
Yeah, interesting. When you talk to like a lot of your friends in tech now, how are they feeling about the market in general, funding wise? I know we've had things cool off in the States. I don't know if we ever had those high valuations over here. Are people still getting funding? Is business still going on out there?
I think so. I think there's a lot of talk about it, but I think good businesses will always get funding. Okay, there may be a big market change, but yeah, and you get different people, right? So you talk to friends. If you talk to someone who's running a really great business, no problem at all. Talk to someone who's got a wacky idea and they're trying to get off the ground and they ask you for advice. I think the advice is don't do it. It's a crap idea,
right,
Right. So big valuations worry me a little bit. Where we've got far too many unicorns that are.
Yeah. It can end up killing you, that big valuation, because no one wants to fund on a down round.
Exactly.
And it can actually hurt you sometimes going for that big, let me tell all the kids I graduated with valuation. So a little dangerous. Let me ask you about branding. Something I don't do very often here, but you really nailed your branding. I've been in your offices. You got your core values. And it always looks slick ever since I've seen Dad. And I know you have that kind of a knack for that background. When it comes to a startup, whether it's a 1-person or a 10-person operation, 15, you've been all of those things. When is it time to focus on that brand, and when is it time to not? Because there's a time where you don't want to spend the money on a logo and you need to really be worrying about the MVP or many other things.
Yep.
But then there's a point where you've gone too far and you've got a lousy logo and you're communicating low value by not having these things tightened up.
Absolutely.
What's your read on that? Because you guys seem to have nailed that.
Spend no money on branding whatsoever. Get it out into the market, go as fast as you can. Any time you spend any minute on doing a logo is just wasted time, is advice I've had in the past. I don't buy it, particularly for what we're doing. So I think we have a chance of bringing something completely new to a market. Trust is key. How do you build trust? You earn trust. Well, even if I told you I had the world's best app and you connected to the most smart expert, if you then experienced it, to me brand is, it's not the logo, it's not the name, but it's the whole package. Yeah. And it was just clunky. I parked my car at the train station this morning and it's the 5th iteration of a car parking app. Great that it's not an app, so I don't have to use the coins and the meter, but it's dreadful. Like I wouldn't even want to name who it is, but it's absolutely dreadful. The app doesn't work. It keeps crashing. It's got all sorts of weird graphics in it, and I'm not going to trust it. I use it because there's no other choice, but it's absolutely awful. So I think it's an art, not a science. I think you've got to get it to the point where it's a reflection of what you're trying to do as a business. So if you're some B2B business, there are a lot of highly successful, highly valuable businesses that I think their interfaces and their branding are just dreadful. So it's different. The consumer brand, where you're trying to earn trust, you've got to get that right. So
and change behavior.
I love the fact you think we've nailed it. I don't think we're anywhere near. It's great.
Yeah, well, I noticed it just feels like it feels congruent with who you are, and that's not always what you get. Sometimes you get people that dumped a lot of money in a logo, and it feels like it's not them. It feels like it's something slick that was made to make them look different. Yeah, and it's very subtle, but I think most people can tell.
Yeah, but what that is, I think, is a guy, a team, a business that hasn't done this before, and so they pay for the agency. They drop 10, 20, 50 grand or whatever, and they get a third-party view, and they get given product values, and they get given a shiny logo and a color scheme, and this beautiful rebrand. And it's not authentic, it's not right, it's not from the team. I guess I'm lucky, really. I've worked with different people along my way. I've got a part of my background is in agency, and I've helped people do that for some time. I have people I can sit down with and say, look, I've got all these crazy ideas. I just talk at them. We do that as a team, and then you get those really annoying people who go, oh, well, what you're trying to say is this. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And we can kind of do an iteration of, this is what we think the illustration style will be, and then it's just a refinement and a tweak. So I think we've done okay.
No, that's good advice. Couple more questions. What's your management style? I've been in your offices, and there is a calmness there. Everyone seems to be getting their work done, although everyone doesn't seem to be trying to look busy. Everyone just seems to be efficiently working, and that usually is a reflection of the top. How do you lead?
I think that was just because you came around, Brian. I run a business that is a reflection of what I'm like, I think. I don't run a party house, a young hipster, Silicon roundabout tech startup. We're running a very serious business. We're very focused. We are goal-orientated. We spend a lot of time on thinking about where we want to get to. Right now, we've done it over 12 months. I'd argue that's too long, but we do it over 12 months. This is where we've got to get to, right back, refresh what's our mission statement, what are our goals over the next few months. Then we break it down into a roadmap, and we just do that. So everyone just is super clear about what they're doing. And most of my time internally in the business I spend on communication. It's ironic, really, because that's what we're trying to use as the problem we're trying to solve in the industry. But I think the hardest thing is communication internally. With 17 people now, and goodness knows what it'd be like at 50 or 100, but that is the hard thing to do. I think make sure everyone knows what's going on and how to work.
It is hard. It's really hard, and I think most CEOs don't realize that maybe 30 or 40% of their message is getting communicated. This is when you're all in close quarters, and they might have heard you say that thing many times, but sometimes they just don't get it. And so it's just about over communicating, and I've learned that I need to do that myself. And I have like affirmations in the morning, like I must over communicate everything, I must tell everyone everything. And so like I try now to give enough information to where people are like, okay, I don't care anymore, Brian, about that deal. But I try to let everybody up and down the chain of command know what's going on, because I feel like they need to know, because they can probably always help. A worst case, the more information, the better. They feel like they're part of the process. And I wasn't always like that. But it's tricky. And when you're in startup mode, there's always some crisis. There's always a fire to put out, and it's easy to let that stuff slide, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we do that not a lot of businesses do, but it's just be super transparent. So, let's tell people what's going on, warts and all. And, it's never going to be always good news. Just simple things like every Friday, 4:00, we sit around, we have a beer or whatever, and we do highlights and lowlights. So not everybody, because it probably take far too long and we'd be far too drunk at the end of it, but what are the highlights this week? What are you proud of? What have we done? What have we shipped? And what could we have done better? And that literally is warts and all. So it's what has gone bad, because if you don't surface it, then it just festers.
Yeah, that's one of the good things to do. Something good that happened and bad that happened, and just get it all out. It's a great way to do it. Ben, I always ask people that come here something towards the end, and I'm going to ask you the same question, because it tells a lot about the person sometimes. But if you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Ben Wynn and give that young man a bit of advice, knowing what you've known now, you've seen so many different products. You saw the pre-smartphone or Uber version at the fingertips. You've been through all these things. Now this last experience with Dad. What would you tell that 20-year-old Ben?
Well, I studied civil engineering. So at 20, I was, I think at 20, I was in the yellow vest with the white hard hat on, building motorways. So I like to say that I built a motorway up in Yorkshire, and I built the UK's most notoriously bad motorway down or road extension down in Exeter, down in Devon. And in that time, I'll take you on a real detour here, but at that time we were doing the earthworks of the road. And so this is where you've got those massive machines that go in and horse out forests and trees and stuff like that to cut the way for the road to be laid. And there's loads of protesters. There's people chained to trees, and they've been digging tunnels and all this sort of stuff. And you don't build our road here. And I'm not against sort of protecting the environment, but my job at that time as the sort of young graduate was to make sure the machines could go through. So this has been going on for a long time, and the security guards would say they've cleared all the tunnels and cleared all of the trees, and there's no one there. We turn up and there's loads of press there, and there's people chained to the trees still, but they reckon that they've got everyone out of the tunnels, so therefore we'll just start plough through. And the security guards tell me there's absolutely no one in these tunnels whatsoever. You're okay, you're cleared. So I get the metal stake, and we've got the sledgehammer, and we're banging these stakes in, and the people in the trees are going, no, don't bang these stakes in. Turns out this guy Swampy, who was a real character at the time, this protester was underneath there, and I very nearly staked Swampy at that moment. And that would have changed my career quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, it would have.
But not really at that moment, but what I realised with construction is it just was far too slow, like literally crazy slow. It's a business that's got like 1% margin. What I wanted to do was build things and be proud of what I built, build a road, build a bridge. And that was going to take me 30 years or 40 years of my career before I'd be the person doing that. And I just realised that was way too slow. But then I was too slow jumping from that to whatever else I did. And I've been entrepreneurial since I was like 14 years old. And I think the advice I give myself was just get out of this now and go into something you love. Don't be afraid, I think.
Yeah. And
it took me a long time to, for me, I mentioned before, I was working at Logica, I was sort of corporate because that's what graduate advice was, and this is the grounding. And to jump to a startup, I was like, oh, it's just a big decision. It's risky. I see no risk in it whatsoever right now. It's sure the thing could fail, but what like you can't get another job?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy,
That mentality's changed a lot now.
Yeah.
On that same note, best advice you've ever received. It may or may not have come from your dad.
My dad's advice I always remember is measure twice, cut once. So it's very related to what we're doing, and that was always because he always taught me practical things. He is a not a carpenter, but he's very good with his hands. He builds stuff out of wood, so he's building furniture and stuff like that right now in his retirement. And the measure twice, cut once, naturally, is, you're going to do something with wood, measure it before you cut. But the real thing that carries through is just be sure. Before you commit, be sure. And I have that at the back of my mind whenever I hire people, because it only takes an extra second to do the extra measure or the extra check or whatever, and it can have real consequences. So.
What is
the bit I love with that is he called me up the other day and he's making a wardrobe for his bedroom and he'd forgotten to do it. He got it wrong.
Oh, really? It's good to know every now and
so
then.
You know what I said to you? I said, I'll measure twice, cut once.
Well, what does Dad think of Dad now? Do you talk about it much?
We don't talk about it much. All he'll say is, how's it going? Do you need any help? Because he helped us out initially. He was one of our experts, right? And
that's cool.
He's proud of it. I tell you the other piece of advice that he always gave me. He said, never work with your hands. And that's weird because I'm using technology to empower people, for people that do work with their hands. But I like the idea of don't work with your hands, because what he was meaning there is he was a teacher. He spent all of his career in education, and in order to top up money, he set up a handicrafts business. So Wynn Handicrafts was this business, and it was making all sorts of things, wooden plaques and fruit bowls and egg cups and stuff like that. You see them at all kind of craft fairs and stalls and things like that. So I learned to do that as a young kid. At age 4, he had me sanding stuff and varnishing stuff. It was a real kind of family business. My mum did the pyrography, where you kind of burn into the wood, and I did the sanding and the varnishing. And what he realised was teaching is great, but it's low paid. You do it as a vocation rather than as anything to get rich from. And working with his hands, he had 160 hours a week, finite amount of time. You could make the most beautiful stuff out of wood, but he was never going to scale it. And so his advice really was just don't do something working with your hands.
Yeah, that's a nice way of do something that scales.
Yeah.
Right. Last part of that question, I usually say to the 20-year-old that's listening to us, what advice do you give to them? But I'm also curious at the advice that you would give to someone who wants to be in technology startup, because it's interesting. Earlier you said we're not running a hip shortage roundabout, company. You're not going to find any slides in Ben's company. And I'm curious what you think of sometimes the media hype and media bias about people wanting to go into tech startup. What do you tell that young 20-something-year-old that wants to be the next, Travis of Uber? What do you tell them?
Well, so I think I've got two answers to that, really. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the hype. I love the hype in terms of build a profile and build London as a tech scene. I think that's great. But there are far too many people that apply to us right now who just want to do it because it's cool. And I think there is a challenge of you want to be the next Sergey, you want to be the next Travis, and it's like winning a lottery doing that. It's kind of just potluck. They've got no experience, no grounding, no network, nothing. The advice I would give is find a business that's scaling. I kind of did this by serendipity. I was at that startup doing Uber on feature phones. As that failed, I ended up at Overture. So I got a job at Overture that was printing money, fantastic business. They'd invented paid search. They sold out to Yahoo for probably not enough money, but 2.2 billion. It's not too bad. What I saw there was a business that was just hyper successful, growing, scaling, and some super bright, super successful people. So what would I advise the guy that wants to get into it right now, the 20-year-old? Go and find a business like that, because they attract talent, so you build your network, probably the most important thing you could do, and you see success. So you don't want to be in a failing startup, because then there's a whole world of negativity. It's you and 3 others in a bedroom trying hard, but you're not learning. So if you're learning from success, that tells you how to do it, and that's the blueprint you want going forward. So, so who's that? It would be a Deliveroo, it may be an Uber. You don't want a business that's too big. I would say it's not a Google or a Facebook. They're past that. Yeah. But you need that ramp, I think.
Yeah, and then also be prepared to work fairly hard.
Oh, yeah, but that's if you're not prepared. But then that's funny, because there is a stereotype of the younger generation won't work hard, right? And they just expect it all on the plate. And yes, you see that, but that's just bad hiring. Like, there are people that are prepared to work hard, and if you're not prepared to work hard, you'll never get anywhere. So, yes, I give that advice, but I probably wouldn't want to speak to them in the first place if they were people that were
that's
just
true.
freeloaders. So.
Also, I think people always see these quote unquote overnight successes. And if you look down deeper, these companies have been putting in the time for 5 and 7 years before they go public or, get these big valuations. And so
what I say to the people that join, so, you got a junior person coming to Dad, and I interview everybody. I want to make sure I know absolutely everybody in the business. I mean, that will change as we scale, but know what you're going to get out of this. This is a project. Every job you ever do going forward is a project. It's not a career. It's not a lifetime thing. Who knows how long Dad will last? Who knows how long any job they ever get will last? But think of it as a project. Think about what you want to get out of it. And a young 20-year-old going into a scaling business or coming into Dad needs to think about what they'll get at the end of that 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year period, whatever it is. And it's learning at that stage. Just learn as much as you possibly can, as fast as you can. Put the hard work in, sure, but come out of it knowing more. You might get a holiday, you might get some cash, you might become rich. Great, but don't do it for that. That's just the wrong reason. So
yeah, that's a very good point. Just going for that learning asset. So Ben, it's been great getting to know you and watching what you're doing with Dad. I keep thinking when I was sitting here with this time that, in 3 years from now, am I going to be, are you going to be on the cover of magazines and things like that? And so it's exciting for me because I get the benefit, with Silicon Reel to go ahead and meet with all these CEOs and founders. And it's amazing what happens in 3 years. And sometimes it's not the ones you think and the other ones that make it and don't make it. And so, but it's interesting to see your platform and the thought that you've put in this product. And I ultimately think that thinking of that customer while also being intelligent and strategic in those things is what makes these great businesses.
I hope so.
And I hope so too. So all the best to you in the future. I am actually planning to give Dad a call because I need this chair fixed.
There you go.
And so we're going to be back to do some repeat business with you.
Fantastic.
If that's okay.
One customer at a time, Brian.
As we say on Silicon Reel, it's about the people. You are one of them. Thanks so much, Ben, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been fantastic.
All right, cool.